Parliament might have broken for the winter recess, but Garth Hamilton, Deputy Chair of the Parliament's Economics Committee in the House, isn't letting go of the issues that are making life hard for Australians. Inflation in the cost of living and specifically the cost of housing. I'm pleased to say he joins me now. Garth, thank you so much for your time tonight. There's been lots of speculation recently about who the next governor of the RBA will be. But you've observed that no matter who it is, they're going to face a much harder time because of the proposal to change the remit of the RBA to take into account both questions of inflation and questions of employment. Tell us all why it is you're concerned about that.
Well, for a start, Amanda, we've seen how difficult it's been to make decisions as it is. You know, that current
I suppose they've only got just inflation and it's still pretty hard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is the hard work of Peter Costello to set that 2 to 3% inflation target, and keeping it at that is very difficult. To include, this is a recommendation from a review into the RBA, to include unemployment, to have equal weighting with that, makes the job almost impossible because, quite frankly, there's no direct link with what the RBA can do and directly impacting unemployment the way it can inflation. So look, this could be a very difficult challenge for whoever comes in. And quite frankly, I am a bit sceptical when we have a Treasurer who wants to rewrite capitalism of any change that comes through. I think it's important we do scrutinise these things.
What troubles me about it is that inflation is driven by the decisions of the RBA, but it's also driven by fiscal policy. It's driven by what governments do as well. If you introduce unemployment into that mix as well, arguably there's even more of a fiscal element to the drivers of unemployment. Are we asking the RBA to do a job that is asking them to do more political work in a way that potentially undermines their independence?
Now, I think at the heart, this is the concern that I have. We've seen the RBA Deputy Governor make comments just this week about the unemployment band that they'd like to see us get to in time. So they do consider this. But to give it equal weighting with inflation is just imagine the extremes when 15% inflation, let's say, and 0% unemployment. Well, you're not going to consider those two things equally. You're going to have to make some judgment on this. But I think that the sad part is that monetary policy should be accommodating fiscal policy, should be dominated by it.
Yeah.
And that independence needs to remain. And by giving equal weighting to this, I think there's a real risk of challenging what has been, by and large, a very successful position for the RBA.
Of course, what the RBA does flows on to the affordability of mortgages, which affects housing. And anyone looking at it can see we've got a housing crisis right now. And whether you're trying to rent, whether you're trying to pay a mortgage, whether you're just trying to get into a property to be a buyer, it's all really hard, and supply is at the heart of this problem. Labor have said they'll have a fund. It won't even touch the sides of what is essentially only targeting public housing type problems. The Greens want a rental freeze, which can surely only make things worse. But isn't this a problem that is essentially the product of green-leaning councils?
Oh, absolutely. And let's be very clear. The number one issue, I think, facing Australia is getting young Australians into home ownership, keeping that great Australian dream alive. But what we need to prosecute is for people to understand what's caused the supply issues has been green policies at that local level, restricting supplies. Every time we see increases in red and green tape, every time that NIMBY attitude comes back and pushes back against a new development, that's reducing supply. And we've seen that across the nation. So as much as the issue is one of supply, it's really an issue of bad green policy that is causing it. And the solution is not more bad green policy. Now, we have to address supply. Neither party, Labor or the Greens, are doing that. They're having this little tiff, but really it's a bit of kabuki theatre at this point.